But anyway, look, the next method of increasing or progressing training, and Gary touched on this in a second ago when he was talking about double progression, which we will also come back to, is adding reps, right? Because this is clearly also a valid method of progressing your training, right? So if you used to be able to do 8 reps with a certain weight, or 6 reps or 5 reps or whatever reps it is, if you're able to do that and now you're able to do 3 more reps, 4 more reps, 5 more reps, whatever it is, that's clearly progress. Like if you start out and you're squatting 60 kilos and you're doing that for 8 reps, and then the next workout you're like, oh, I don't really think I can increase the weight, but I'm actually going to just do an extra rep. I think I'd be able for that. That is clearly progression, right? Like you've done more, you've put more tension on those muscles by virtue of doing another rep, right? So that is something, again, we have to be aware of. Now, obviously, we still want to be working in the, as we talked about previously, the rep range that is appropriate for the adaptations that we want. You can't just be like, oh, I was working in the 12 rep range, and I'm just going to keep adding reps until I'm at 25 reps. It's like we start getting into like rep ranges that we're not actually trying to target, right? So there is a limit to this, and generally we kind of go for, we'll say, a spread of like 3 to maybe 4 reps, where it's like that's what we're looking at before we're looking at maybe increasing the weight, right? Which brings us to the next point, which is that kind of double progression method, and we will come back to adding reps in a second. But you could do something like, I'm gonna do this exercise and I'm gonna do it for 10 reps, right? And the next workout, I'm not going to be able, like, again, we'll go back to the lateral raise example, because you're not going to be able to add huge amounts of weight to this, right? So you do 10 reps, you do it at your whatever 8 or 7.5 kilos, right? And you're like, okay, I'm doing this for 10 reps, and I'm going to build this up until I'm able to do it for 12 reps, 13 reps, maybe 15 reps, right? We'll just set it as a 15 rep target, right? And once you get that up to 15 reps, the next thing you're going to do is, I'm going to add weight to the add weight there. I'm going to go up to the 10 kilos now, and I'm going to bring it back down to, like, I don't know, 10 reps, and try to slowly build it back up over time. And that would be kind of a double progression method. And there's multiple ways that you can implement double progression methods, but that would be, potentially one way, right? So adding reps is clearly a way that you can progress your training, and like it is a perfectly valid way of progressing your training. However, much like with adding weight to the bar, it is actually quite hard to add one more rep. Like if you are doing 10 reps and you add one more rep, it's like you have done 10% more. It's like if you were to, again, use the same thought process and go, I was doing 100 kilos to add 10%. Are you going to add 10 kilos to the bar? Maybe not. So there are clearly limits to this as well. And it especially falls apart when we're at the lower end of the rep range. So if you do like 3 reps, you're not going to go to the next session and be like, oh, I'm just going to add 4, I'm going to do another rep, I'm going to do 4 reps, like it's very rare that that's going to be the case. And especially if you are, a lot closer to failure on that lift, again, this is why we said earlier on, like you do start having to think about different progression methods, and this is one that we will talk about in a second. But if you're using a double progression method, and then you're also layering on something like reps in reserve or RPE, you've kind of got a triple progression method going on, and it can be really good. We'll come back to that in a second, right? But what are your thoughts on adding reps, Gary? Like, what's the story there? Like, is that a good way to progress training? And do you see any faults with it, other than the fact that, it can be quite hard to add reps rather than adding weight?
Yeah, I think it works quite well. It's very similar to the discussion of increasing weight, but it does give you a bit more versatility where there might not be appropriate jumps in weight. For example, if your dumbbells are spread out in 5 kilo increments, that's not going to be sustainable, because 5 kilos on each side, that's increasing by 10 kilos, from 20 to 25 per side, let's say. So it does give you a bit of versatility there. Same with some machines. Some machines have very big gaps in terms of the load that's lifted. And it also can reduce the frequency with which you need to add more plates to the bar or machine, which is particularly useful on things like leg presses, for example. One of the reasons you don't see people doing like sets of 5 on leg presses, because just the hassle of adding all the weight to each side. I'd rather just do sets of 20 with lower weight, to be honest. So that again is a nice means of progression there, where you want to keep the weight fixed. Of course, it's something as well that's great for people who are training at home, more limited weight options, or you just have one kettlebell or something. That's where I'd be considering broadening, like you said, where we'd have a range of maybe 3 to 4 reps across which we'd ask the person to increase the reps before increasing the weight. You can tailor that to the client. So, for example, if I know that my client has a 16 kilo kettlebell and a 24 kilo kettlebell, then I'm going to be working on increasing reps with the 16 kilo kettlebell for quite a while, across a much broader range potentially. So it might be that they can only do 8 reps of a single arm shoulder press with the 16, and I might want them to get to 15 reps with that weight before we ever touch the 24 really, because of that large difference in weight. So there are some of the additional considerations. The reps option, I do think it offers a bit of versatility, and it can also allow people to overcome some of the anxiety that they have with reaching certain targets. Sometimes the first time you put 60 kilos on the bar, 20 each side, or 100 kilos, 220s each side, they can be like big deals for people. So if you can get really confident with increasing reps at like 95 kilos instead of 100 or whatever, then it doesn't seem as daunting when you do get over those kind of, I guess, arbitrary but understandably stressful numbers.
100%, right? And then we touched on this one, the next method here, a little bit a second ago, but this is basically increasing effort, or you could describe it as increasing your proximity to failure, right? And you can do this a number of ways. You can use something like an RPE, like a rating of perceived exertion. You're like, oh, that was an 8 out of 10. That's how hard it was. That's, and that does, like, you can use that in a way to describe how many reps you have left. So you could say like an RPE 8 is maybe you have 2 reps left in the tank, but that kind of is the next concept, which is reps in reserve, right? And that's basically saying, how many reps do I have left? How many reps do I think I would be able to get given I just finished that set? I've done 8 reps. Like, was that 0 reps in reserve? Was that 8th rep the last one I possibly could have done? Which is very rare to actually see someone do a like proper 0 reps in reserve. And realistically, even when someone does a proper like 0 reps in reserve set, like it's probably not true 0. Like, it's trending ever so close to 0, but it's never quite 0. Like, you are maybe, again, you have, like, if you had added a micro plate there, you could have had like 200 grams extra on the bar. You could have had 100 grams extra on the bar, and that would have been a true RPE 10 or a reps in reserve of 0. So it's never truly 0, but we're always tending towards that 0 when we say I actually reached failure, right?